Serhey Sumlenny, political scientist on Russia, is with us tonight. Thank you so very much for joining, Serhey.
Hello, and thank you for having invited me. It's a great pleasure and a great honor for me every time to be your guest.
Thank you so very much. How could I know? I mean, the things that are happening actually just pushing me to the best experts and to you. Tariffs. Oh my God. Let's put aside Trump's logic about that, if there is any. Let's invest time into the question what Europe would and should do about all this, I don't know, mayhem. Should there be any retaliation? Because at the moment we see just nothing, just complete silence. Am I right?
Well, there are not so much options to react, and everyone knows that trade wars are a very tricky thing. They help nobody but harm everyone. That's why the concept of tariff-free trade was created, and World Trade Organization was created as mutual trade and providing services is beneficial for everyone. That is what economists know since at least Adam Smith. And for me personally, as for the person who has studied competition law and international law, it's amazing to see that all my classes on WTO, on General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and on Tariffs and Services, and that is all like it's so anachronistic now. And everything what we used to learn as the fundamentals of the international cooperation and international trade and legal fundamentals of coexistence of economies and creating additional added value and more more goods, more benefits for everyone, it's gone. And I think that the European politicians look at this situation with the same mixture of shock and lack of trust. I would say they don't believe their eyes. Is it for real now? And don't know how to react. Of course, Europe can introduce barriers and tariffs and some prohibition of trade and punish the United States. Okay. But it will punish us as well. And that's not what Europe wants to do. We don't want to punish the US. We want to trade. We want to cooperate. And the United States is not a hostile country like Russia is. We don't want to go into conflict with the US. We want to continue being allies and trade partners and friends.
But, I mean, different opinions run around the globe. I mean, United States Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, he said, I mean, I'm just quoting it to you now, Trump is going to relaunch global trade. I mean, maybe that's the plan. The question is, do you believe there is a plan after all? Any plan somewhere deep down inside President Trump's head?
Well, there is definitely a plan. Let's do something and look how it's going. Let's create some havoc. Let's disrupt. And I think that it is also one of the fundamental ideas of Trump's second presidency to disrupt, to create so much disruption, to create so much chaos, to create so much shock everywhere, like on international politics, international trade, international relations, law, etc. That your opponents they cannot react anymore because they don't know what to do. And I think there is some sort of a hope that after a global relaunch of anything achieved through economic collapse and crash, there can be some sort of reshuffling of courts, reshuffling of resources, and the US would be able to get more resources or influence or power compared to what the US used to have. Because, frankly speaking, I would understand it from a certain point of view, as the US was a total global leader in 1940s, 1950s.
Right, there we go.
During the World War II, the Allies won also because the US had 50% of world economy. Like every US dollar, or every, I don't know, like every pound of gold of worth produced in the world, one half of it was the US. So back then, the US could really dominate any conflict, any war, any dispute. Now it's not the fact anymore. And of course, there is like some sort of a wish, like the globalization didn't help us to the extent we wanted it to help us. So we are profiting, of course, like I mean the global West and the US as
Right,
well.
sure,
We
sure.
are profiting from the globalization. Everything is cheaper. We have services and goods we couldn't even dream about back then. Just think about like uh, plane ticket in 1950s was something luxurious. Now you buy it like for, I don't know, like ten
$50 or
dollars
something.
and fly whatever you
$10,
want,
right? Exactly.
and etc. But we're not, as leaders look at the world, so they say, okay, everything is cheaper, everything is more affordable, but we are not the only and undisputable leader. We want to be it. And from this perspective, maybe Trump's politics is a way to achieve this
Right.
domination. But okay, if you want to be a winner in a like over economic ruins, okay, be my guest.
Well, I mean, we are the ruins. That's my problem. But the thing is that, all right, if we talk, so your point is that this is like a hard reset, and this is the hard reset relaunch of the global economy. It will pull back United States into the leading positions. But we see
If we assume that there is a plan,
right, sure,
because
sure.
it's a, frankly speaking, it's a very generous assumption
It
that there
is. It
is
is. I
some
mean,
sort of
sure.
a plan.
Because I mean, I was speaking to my colleagues with the Time Mag when I was in Munich Security Conference. I was speaking to Washington Post. I was speaking to New York Post. To many of them, I was sitting having grabbed a beer, and we're talking. I said, "What's going on?" Screaming on the top of my lungs, "What's going on?" And they were like, "We have no idea." And that's the whole thing. Like there is no plan. They think, they believe, and then from what their experience is telling them that there is a complete amount of impulse. That's who Donald J. Trump is.
You have
But
already
we
seen that. Elon Musk has already criticized this policy pretty indirectly, but saying that he would like to have more harmony in trade relations to Europe. And I understand him, because like he's losing his wealth rapidly now. Okay, he's still
well,
the most the wealthiest person in the world,
right,
totally
sure.
influential. But okay, even if you are the wealthiest person in the world, if you lose like 10%, 20% of your wealth, you're
It's
not
nothing.
happy.
Well, I mean, the thing is that right. I mean, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, this tandem, they're not friends. There are allies at the moment, but I mean, now Elon Musk is not like something, but maybe he should be acting in a different way to get a different result. But that's not the question. The question is that, all right, the hard reset, this we do afford ourselves that general assumption that Trump has a plan. Now, what about the protests in America? I mean, there are many of them. People are coming. I mean, the more and more I mean, do you believe this is going to grow into something that is going seriously to trouble, to have to cause trouble to Donald Trump, to his career, to his presidency, even?
I don't believe in any protests.
Hmm.
Like, do you know any global result of protests in the democracies during the last, let me say, 20, 30 years?
Many of them, well, not in a very
No,
peaceful way.
look. If you look, for example, at the war in Iraq, which I personally think was the right thing, and I don't think that that was something
Sure.
which was so terrible. But there were like protests without end in the US, in the UK. Who cared?
But this
Like
is
literally,
something different. I mean, this is inside. This is not a foreign policy anymore. This is old. I mean, take me personally. I think that
the
Trump did a very good.
alarm. like Black Lives
Right,
Matters.
right, yeah, right. I mean,
Did it
of course,
help?
but I
Quite the
mean,
opposite. BLM has mobilized Trumpists. BLM was, after all, the one of the most successful ways for Donald Trump to win.
so you
And
don't believe in these protests
my
are
point
not
is
natural and is going to lead to something that's going to endanger his presidency at all. This is just like nothing, no
like
collateral damage.
my point is, look, my point is that if you can protest how much you would like to, it doesn't help you to push your point of view into the real decisions, into real policy.
What does?
The executive power and the legislative power and
Mm,
the judicative power, you cannot influence them with protests.
mm,
The protests are good for mobilizing people in front of elections, but also to
mm,
scare your opponents and to mobilize them,
mm.
paradoxically.
Right.
And if the politicians you want to address with your protest, whose behavior you want to change, if they are
Mm,
really ready to change their opinion and tend to your side, or try to find a sort of a compromise, a harmony,
right, right,
this can
right.
help. But Trump doesn't want to find this harmony with his opponents. He wants
Nope.
them to be neutralized. So from this perspective, as long as Trump and MAGA have certain key positions in several branches of power, in judicative, legislative, and executive power, protests will just help them to mobilize, to find this unity in their core. So no, I don't believe in any protest in this case. You
Mm.
cannot change behavior of a person who believes he's chosen to win a millennium fight against some evil. You
Now, what is
cannot
evil
change
these days?
his behavior.
What is evil? All right. So if I'm taking that as a very detailed. Again, your expertise is amazing, and I like discussing things with you. So let's speculate and discuss one more thing. I mean, you said just millennium evil. What is the millennium evil? He certainly recognizes Vladimir Putin, if not as a close friend, then at least an ally. So, what is evil for Trump then?
I
What is
don't
he
know.
fighting against?
I
Right,
don't
right.
know. Maybe tomorrow is one thing, and today another thing. I don't
All
know.
right, all right.
But
Okay.
we clearly understand that his position, he believes that he's doing the right thing, and he knows the way, and
So he's the Messiah, the Messiah,
he's not afraid
global.
of a conflict,
Hmm.
and he believes that those who criticize him, they understand nothing. And frankly speaking, he's right, because he wins elections against all odds. How many people said Kamala will win this election? And he
Right,
said,
right.
no, she will not. And how many people said, okay, his arguments are stupid?
Oh,
He won so many words. Of course, he has all reasons to believe he's right and others are
right.
not.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you end up with the again. He's again a convicted fellow. Is a felon. Excuse me. A convicted felon is in United States President's office again for second time in a row. So he's right.
Yeah,
Obviously.
he was like they tried to impeach him several times. They failed. They tried to imprison him. They failed.
Mm.
They tried to beat him on elections. They failed. Uh, so what's the problem? Like
They
he
tried to
sees
kill
that
him
what he's doing is
twice.
right.
Yeah, they tried to kill him twice. They failed just as well. All right. So last question. For let's slide to something different here. Kriveri. This is one of the events, terrible, disastrous events that changed me through the course of these last days, just as well as Bucha. But I was in Bucha. I've seen what they've done there. I've seen the pitting ground and everything. But the terrible disaster, and Ukraine calls for United Nations. I mean, didn't the United Nations already prove itself complete impotent politically? Why to call? Is there any reason?
I wouldn't call the United Nations impotent. I would call them corrupt and evil. Uh,
Right.
you can find so many calls and statements by the United Nations General Secretary
Hmm.
practically blaming Ukraine for escalating and calling Ukraine not to escalate. And I have never heard that Antonio Gutierrez has blamed Russia for anything. Have we heard his statement after Russia killed 9 children in Kryvyi Rih? No, but we heard his statement when Russia claimed that Ukraine has struck Belgorod, which was utterly lie, clearly lie.
Right.
So, have we seen the results of investigation of the United Nations on mass murder of Ukrainian prisoners of Azovstal defenders in Olenivka prison? No. Like
Nothing.
100 people were just burned alive in a prison, and the United Nations have appointed a pro-Putin general from Brasilia who was shaking Putin's hand, and then they published a result of their investigation practically focusing on the fact that they have not visited the site, and without visiting the site they can come to no conclusion, so the case is closed. The United
It's very,
Nations
this
clearly,
is
at
very,
least in
very,
the form of their top institutions like
right.
the general secretary, solidarized with Russia. And that is not important. That is evil and corrupt and bad and criminal.
Evil, corrupt, bad, and criminal. Absolutely agree. And I was not pushing you to that answer. This is absolutely coincides with my position. But why to call them for? What do we expect from Antonio Gutierrez now, and from his team, and from his people? And
Yeah,
what
because Ukraine is in a very tricky situation. Ukraine cannot
notice
just
down?
uh, Ukraine cannot just push away all fundamental institutions of international peace order, and the UN is one of these institutions, and say, okay, we don't need them because Ukraine needs to get solidarity of the allies, Germany, United Kingdom, other countries. And you cannot just say, okay, we don't care about the UN, because what else do you want to have? You want to appeal to the fundaments of the international law and to the international community, but you cannot do it without appealing to the UN, knowing that
Hmm.
the UN is corrupt and evil. Because
So what?
unfortunately, Germany is not ready to send troops to Ukraine or to shell Russian military sites, which
Hmm.
would be an absolutely reasonable solution and would be absolutely in harmony with the UN Charter, Article 51, collective defense. And as long as Germany and other countries are not ready to do this, even after these type of crimes like murdering children with a cluster munition bomb, deliberately bombarding a children playground, Ukraine is practically has no choice. Ukrainians need to appeal the UN to show, look, help us. There is a clear violation of international law. But
But we don't
unfortunately,
really expect, we as a country, I mean, Ukraine, we don't really expect that they will help us, right? We're just going
that's
then to
true.
point for the absence of that help, and how evil and bad and corrupt is that.
Well, since more than 3 years of this full-scale war, international community has demonstrated very limited support for Ukraine. We still are not ready to sanction Russia harshly. We still are not ready to provide Ukraine with all weapons Ukraine need. International institutions like International Olympic Committee are now working on welcoming Russian athletes. 2/3 of them are active military personnel. Come on.
Hmm.
Russia is still a permanent member of the Security Council in the UN, holding this seat absolutely illegally against the UN regulations. And that's the reality. So Ukraine tries to survive in this war and is forced to act knowingly and in full understanding of imperfection of the world, but using the instruments and alliances and tools which are available.
Right. Again, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so very much, Sergey, for that Blake, to talk with you is an immense pleasure. Thank you so very much. And we do it at it. Say next week when you have time, because I believe next week is going to be something big. But there's just one little question that I'm just craving to know answer for. Let me read out that for you. Just happened a couple of hours ago, the news, I mean. Ukraine's foreign ministry has called in China's charge affairs for explanations regarding information about Chinese citizens participating in the fighting on the side of Russia. You, of course, heard about that. So, Chinese soldiers fighting on the Russian side against Ukraine in Ukraine. Do you think that China will answer? I mean, do you believe for any outcome, any
I
response?
don't think so. I don't think there will be any substantial answer. We knew that Chinese soldiers are there.
Oh,
We have
sure.
seen the videos. We have
Well,
seen
of
the
course.
videos from Russian positions. We have seen their like their photographs. The only
Mm.
difference is now we have two Chinese prisoners of war in hands of Ukraine army.
And
But
their documents, yes. So
you can always deny, even if it's impossible to deny. You'll say, okay, we don't know. We have 1 billion people in our country. Some of them can go abroad. We
they're
don't know
just
who
really
are they. They have been expelled out of citizenship, etc. Or just ignore it. The
this is
real
more
problem,
likely.
yeah, but the real
This is more
problem here is not that China sends their troops to Russia for gathering information or experience or else, but that some people in Germany, like Wolfgang Ischinger, long years ambassador to the US and Merkel's advisor and long year head of Munich Security Conference, 2 months ago at the forum in Davos, called for Chinese peacekeeper in Ukraine. And he did it, I'm pretty sure he did it knowingly to test the ground. And that until now, people who have very strong political careers on the top levels of Germany's foreign policy, that they try to push this idea of occupying practically Ukraine with troops of a totalitarian regime. That makes me scary. Not that China sent, no idea, 200, 2,000 soldiers to Ukraine. That will change nothing. The real problem is that the free world doesn't stop it, doesn't oppose it, and even encourages it. That is the real problem for me.
would love to discuss this thing more actually, because this is a really interesting situation. If you just so you don't believe that this is a genuine interest in peacekeeping in Ukraine if Chinese troops are setting the foot on the ground. But yeah, I can see you're smiling. Yeah, so let's point that out as a next topic of discussion for the next time. And for now, thank you so very much, Sergey. Hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.